Down towards southern England and Wales, we could see 21, 23 degrees Celsius, so a bit more pleasant and a bit warmer here. If you're hoping that the new week would bring something a bit more summery, I'm afraid I'm going to be the bearer of bad news, because we've got another area of low pressure arriving from the southwest on Monday. This will be bringing bands of showers, some of those looking like they could be heavy, with some thunderstorms, even some hail in the mixture as well, pushing into southern areas of England and Wales. The northern half of the UK is seeing the brightest, probably best of the conditions first thing on Monday, so certainly for northern England it will be a much better start to the day compared to what we've seen over the weekend, but staying unsettled throughout next week. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's our summer treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest cash prize of the year so far. With an extra £30,000 in your bank account this year, you could take the ultimate financial holiday and send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. £30,000 could get you those nagging home improvements done, buy that brand new car, or just enable you to kick back and relax for the rest of the year. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Khloe Kardashian has come under fire after posting a picture of her 6-year-old daughter wearing a full face of makeup.
Yeah, the reality TV star said the youngster was participating in a dance recital and that wasn't an everyday occurrence.
So this morning we're asking, is it ever OK to let children wear makeup?
Well, joining us now is journalist Julie Cook. So, Julie, it's a child wearing full rouge, bright red lipstick, hair tied back, looking very, very stylised, very much, I think, like a young adult. Is this really the sort of thing we should be doing with small children?
Oh, I think it's absolutely fine. I mean, first of all, in Khloe Kardashian's case, it was a dance recital, so it was very much a kind of performance element to it. She said herself in her post, it wasn't something they do every day. She was taking part in a dance activity. So, you know, I think she's vindicated on that front. But I've let my daughter play with makeup since she was 3. When she was 3, she showed a distinct interest in my makeup palettes, going through my stuff. She's 10 now, and while I don't let her wear a full face like a drag queen, I do let her wear, you know, a bit of mascara on a weekend if she wants to. I don't see any harm in it.
Clearly, if you're a child of a Kardashian who's paid millions of dollars to endorse cosmetics, you know, that's part of the fabric of their family. My concern, though, Julie, is putting those pictures on social media where people can see them. We live in an age now where, you know, wrong-uns are scouring the internet all the time.
A lot of girls do enjoy putting makeup on. It's almost like a self-expression thing. It's like painting on a canvas. They're just trying to be a bit artistic. I don't think it's necessarily as sort of sinister as we're making out. And I think as long as you're not posting pictures everywhere or putting them at risk of harm, I don't see any danger.
The People's Channel.
Very good evening. Headliners is up next, but first a quick look at the headlines at 11 o'clock. So Keir Starmer has praised England's footballers ahead of the Euro 2024 final against Spain tomorrow, saying they've made the country proud. In a letter to Gareth Southgate and the team, the Prime Minister's emphasised their graft and hard work, saying he wishes them the very best. Well, Sunday's showdown in Berlin marks England's third major final, hoping to join the 1966 World Cup heroes in history. Despite past criticism, though, and a painful loss to Italy in the Euros final of 2021, Southgate's admitted he wants to win so much it hurts. Earlier, the England boss issued a rallying cry to his players on the eve of their showdown.
I'm not a believer in fairy tales, but I am a believer in dreams. And we've had big dreams. We've felt the need and the importance of that. but then, you know, you have to make those things happen.
While we will be watching the match here at home, thousands of fans have already travelled from far and wide to see the action up close in Berlin. And earlier we spoke to some of them.
Didn't even get to celebrate the goal. As soon as the second one went in on the phone straight away, right, quick, let's just book. We're from Birmingham, we had to get some from London.
Could be a chance of making history tomorrow. I was at the last final and we never won. I've been following England since 2012 and I just want to see them win something.
I hope that it does finally come home. We've waited a long time. I'm 44 now and it hasn't been home in my lifetime. So I hope this time it comes home.
In the US, President Biden's insisting he'll keep fighting in the race to the White House. It comes after two standout mistakes, though, at the NATO summit, where he referred to the Ukrainian president as President Putin and then went on to mix up his own vice president with Donald Trump. But despite those two mistakes, Biden has told his supporters he's not just standing as the Democratic candidate, but he'll also win November's election.
You probably noticed there's a lot of speculation lately. What's Joe Biden going to do? Is he going to stay in the race? Is he going to drop out? Here's my answer. I am running and we're going to win. I'm not going to change that.
Here, racing commentator John Hunt, whose wife and two daughters were killed in a crossbow attack, says the family's devastation can't be put into words. John and his third daughter, Amy, have thanked people for their messages of support since the women were targeted in their own home on Tuesday. 61-year-old Carol Hunt and her two daughters, Louise and Hannah, died from their injuries. It comes as 26-year-old man Carl Clifford has been arrested on suspicion of murder. We've heard tonight that in Birmingham, a man has been charged after a haul of gun parts were found hidden in a car being shipped from Pakistan. Border Force officers at London Gateway Port discovered the components, which investigators say could have been used to build or adapt deadly weapons. 39-year-old Yasir Khan was arrested for attempting to import firearms and charged earlier today. He'll appear before Birmingham magistrates on Monday. And finally, sport and royal news for you. Kensington Palace has confirmed that the Princess of Wales will attend the men's Wimbledon final. While Prince William's in Berlin to watch England take on Spain in the final of Euro 2024, Princess Catherine will present either Novak Djokovic or Carlos Alcaraz the trophy on centre court. It will be her second public appearance following her cancer diagnosis after she made a brief return to the public spotlight last month at Trooping the Colour. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sam Francis. Your next update from the newsroom at 10 o'clock. For now, though, it's time for Headliners.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello and welcome to Headliners, your first look at tomorrow's papers. In the company of three comedians, I'm Stephen Allen, tonight joined by a man who does many different voices, Damien Slash, and a man who hears many different voices. It's Nick Dixon. To be fair, you sit in that seat, which means you're the punchline intro, aren't you?
I'm happy with that. I hear a lot of voices and they all agree with me.
Any punchlines about the hairliners?
Nice, that's good.
Don't bald shame.
No, I would never bald shame.
There was one last time.
It's a dangerous game. It's a dangerous game for the man over about 40 to be bald shaving.
Yeah,
it wasn't you.
Pros come home to roost, or whatever the phrase is.
The adults are back in the room. Let's begin.
He's doing Starmer already, within seconds.
I saw the last time you two were on together,
Yeah.
that you were hosting, it was just like a Starmer off.
It was Starmer heavy.
Yeah, go old school. How are your Ronnie Corbett's?
Poor. I can only do Jordan Peterson. He can do Starmer.
Is that him?
I don't know about that.
Oh, yeah, that's superb, yeah.
That's how you do it. The
Can't do that one.
Are back in the room. Right, let's take a look at your front pages. The Mail on Sunday goes with one last push to finish the job. I found that funny for some reason. The Sunday Times, truant register to save COVID lost generation. The Observer goes with Labour's rooftop revolution to deliver solar power for millions. The Sunday Express, we can do it. The Sunday Telegraph, Miliband accused of risking food supplies. And finally, the Daily Star, roar for the Lions. And those are your front pages. Beginning with the Observer, Damien. What have they got for us?
Well, the Observer has Labour's rooftop revolution. They're going to deliver solar power for millions because Ed Miliband's gone solar crazy. And he's not just going to cover the farmland in solar panels, he's going to cover every single roof in the country with solar panels. Now, you know, we don't all hate solar just because it's terribly inefficient and expensive and mostly made in China. It's cool. Solar's cool, but, you know, I think Ed's got a little bit carried away with solar this week. He's been in office for a week, and, you know, this rooftop revolution is, you know, it will not be televised unless we can actually get some power.
Well, we'll still have wind farms, so that'll cheer you right up. We've got on-land wind farms are back in the fray now, aren't they?
And off-coast as well. And I mean, hopefully we can get enough concrete and transport fueled by, you know, traditional methods to deliver these things and get them up. But, yeah.
You're sounding sceptical for a differing opinion. Nick, what's your take on this?
Well, it's a bit similar. I was reading today, I mean, this was on Pete North's Twitter, that UK solar capacity factor is less than 11% and doesn't work at night. That sounds bad. So I was just trying to familiarise myself with solar. Then he's also done the thing where he's banned the North Sea oil thing, and everyone thinks that's mental, might even lead to legal action. So my whole question with Ed Miliband is why bring back a sort of proven loser? I'm not saying he's a loser as a person, but he's not a winner for the voters with Labour. And to me, he's got bonkers ideas, a bit unpopular. It's like bringing back Jeremy Corbyn as your Chancellor. I just thought Starmer was all about... I'm not going to do the accent because you're too good at it, but I thought it was all about sort of tough decisions and being ruthless. I think, why do you want Ed Miliband doing a load of bonkers policies?
We need more solar panels. Of course, it's obvious.
Stop, can you? This is going to be great.
Well, just chuck it in there every now and then, I suppose.
Handy. There are many Keir Starmer stories these days. You've joined at the right time. I mean, look, obviously they don't work at night. I suppose that shouldn't come as a shock. And the efficiency might be down at 11%, but recent breakthroughs are getting solar panel efficiency up to, theoretically, it could go above 30%, which is like big news in the world of science.
Well, that would be great, wouldn't it? I mean, I hope that's possible. But I did some maths, and there are 29 million houses in the country. The average solar panel setups cost about £4,000. That's just a cheap one from, you know, a very cheap supplier. That comes to £116 billion. And they have to be replaced every few years as well. So, you know, the magic money tree will, you know, disperse, and I'm sure we can start building. So.
I'll be impressed if they get anything built. That's the thing. I mean, Starmer was talking to Blair, and he was last year, and he was saying that it takes 13 years for a single onshore wind farm. Apparently, it's a couple of years to make, then it's 5 years planning, and there's some other years in there somehow. You listen to the whole thing, the bureaucracy and everything, and all the regulations. So they're going to have to get rid of so many regulations to build anything at all.
Well, this is why I don't like it, because it's one of these ideas where the people haven't thought to step two. It's just, it sounds good, it feels good. Let's just, you know, chuck out some solar panels, get Britain moving. But what about, you know, nuclear would actually be completely green, provide energy for everybody, but for some reason we can't even talk about that when all of the, you know...
And nuclear also takes ages, because Michael Gove was saying this thing about fish, you're not allowed to kill the fish. So there's all these, like, ridiculous... Because you need water for nuclear. The water sucks in the fish into these vents. So anything you try and do in the country, there's just all sorts of regulations, and you have to worry about fish and newts and so on.
In Japan, they can whip up a nuclear plant in about 4 years, or maybe it's 7. It's a single-digit number, and then they have that one incident, which now means no one's copying the way they do it.
Yeah, and it was an old plant. But anyway, that's that story in a nutshell.
All right, moving on to the Sunday Telegraph. Nick, what have they got?
Yes, well, they got Miliband again, but they've also got Truss blames Sunak for trashing my record, which I like, Liz, but that is quite funny. I mean, you know, how much of a record could you really have had in the few days you were there? So that's quite funny. A bit of a Liz Trussism, not quite realising how that might sound. But what she means is that tax cuts... I want to be very nice to Liz, but I think... She's talking about tax cuts, and you know, the Tories, they sort of allowed the idea to go... They went with the idea that tax cuts didn't generate growth, and they went with Labour's, what she calls Labour's false narrative, that the global rise in mortgage rates was somehow my fault. So she's sort of saying that, you know, Sunak sucked up to Labour and sort of went against her with his sort of different agenda, but the Tories all pay for that long term, and in a few years people will realise she was right on everything.
I mean, she could have said that without making it about her. She could have said, like, Sunak played it wrong in the battle versus Labour, rather than they ruined my legacy of... Really?
I mean, I'm sure...
If she would have won that election, I reckon it would have changed, you know, oh, she still won the seat, now we think she did everything great.
I suspect Sunak may have pulled a few strings to... muddy the waters for Truss. Because, I mean, he wanted to be the nominee, didn't he? He wanted to be Prime Minister, and she swooped in. And then, he did pull a few strings, I'm sure, and things collapsed very rapidly. And, all the graphs went down. Everything was rugging, and then she came back.
People to tank the pound and ruin the liability-driven asset.
I mean, tanking the pound is child's play.
Sunak tanked the LDIs to get rid of Truss. Yeah,
right.
I do feel he did that, but I'm saying, if the idea that he didn't pull any string at all is mad.
Yeah, well, he certainly somehow became the leader, despite none of the members voting for him. That was quite impressive. And to be fair to Liz Truss, it's not as if whatever Sunak did worked. So she is in some position to say, I was right, maybe.
I was equally wrong. She could also say that in a sentence.
Yeah, I'm not standing up for Liz Truss anyway, but she may have a point.
Yeah, everyone likes growth. She invented growth, so that's... what's the Sunday Times going with, Damien?
The Sunday Times is going with a truant register to save COVID lost generation. So Labour's first King's speech will include a legal duty on councils to keep track of pupils who aren't going to school. Because of these lockdowns that everybody pushed for, even though originally the COVID scientists in charge, one of whom is now been appointed by Keir Starmer as advisor to the NHS, I believe. Well, those lockdowns turned out destroyed the minds and social abilities of an entire generation of young people who are now incapable of conducting themselves in a normal, healthy manner or even going to school. I mean, if you were told not to go to school, you've got to break out of the matrix and realise, hang on, what is school? Why am I there? And suddenly you just don't need to go anymore.
There is no spoon. Will this fix it?
I suspect nothing will ever be fixed by any policy, by any of the governments in this country. That's what I think. I would love to see... I mean, if they fix a single thing, they will be in power for 100 years.
I sort of feel like you break it, you pay for it. Technically it wasn't Labour that did it, but they wanted famously more lockdowns. So I feel like they're responsible as well, and the whole political class is responsible for all of this. And I find it quite amusing. If you've been following Blair, he's obsessed with artificial intelligence. Lo and behold, what's the answer to this? It's artificial intelligence. Will we used to coordinate between schools, GPs and councils? So he just thinks AI is the answer to everything. Children getting back to school, AI. Like, how? But
just
maybe
slap some AI on every single time.
Maybe it'll work.
He's reached the age where his
it's like ketchup.
Tech is just like, use the internet. Like, there was a generation of people who just thought that was the thing. Yeah, no, it's AI. Well, that's the front pages done. On the way next, Labour is getting ready for an election. Has anyone told them they've just won? And Donald Trump has his own Musk. Find out more next.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Welcome back. Stefan Kyriazis has, as ever, been to the theatre and saw one of the most successful performers of the modern age, one who has made his name in different genres on television and is always a magnetic presence on the stage. About whom are we talking, Stefan?
We're talking about James Corden at the Old Vic for The Constituent and its Traverse staging. So audience on either side, and it's a fantastic experience. But also it's been done this time to bring everything in a lot and make it quite intimate, because you just have one simple set. It's just a table, office space. This is a new play by Joe Penhall, and it's addressing very, very current issues of safety, especially for people in public service. Doctors, nurses, teachers, and of course, as you know, politicians that are at risk and being attacked. So we have Joe Cox, Sir David Amess, and we have politicians talking about cancelling their surgeries, not wanting to appear in public, teachers being threatened. And James Corden plays an ex-serviceman who is going through a difficult divorce, dealing with a lot of PTSD, also feeling very much like fathers are overlooked, and he wants to fight for their rights. And an old school friend is a local MP, played by Anna Maxwell Martin. And he goes in to start talking to her, and it starts off quite chummy and jovial, and then it darkens and darkens. He gets quite aggressive and frustrated. She wants to help. She's an absolute idealist. This politician sense of we don't choose who we work for. We are here by duty to work for everybody in our constituency. It spirals a lot. I have to say, Corden, sensational. Really? He really is a fantastic actor. Of all of them, he's so natural. And he has the most difficult role where his character is shifting all the time and becomes potentially quite threatening and dangerous. But then there's also a beautiful catharsis at the end.
The People's Channel. Sunday nights on GB News. From 6, Neil Oliver. At 7, it's Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle. At 9, Mark Dolan. And at 11, get set for the week ahead with headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back to Headliners. I'm Stephen Allen here with Damien Slash and Nick Dixon. And Damien, The Observer, how could Labour win in 2029? It'll be hard because they won't just about a Tory government self-immolate. So.
Yes, well, Labour to fight the 2029 election like an insurgent as preparations are already underway. So they're already trying to figure out how do we win again in, 5 years to 2029. That's insane. And they're getting stuck in, preparing for it with a bunch of radical ideas that are going to win the public over. But as I said before, all Labour really have to do is fix a few potholes, and the crowd will love them for it because everything's so broken. You fix one thing, and it's 5 more years. Perfect.
I tend to agree with that. They could actually get a bigger majority and do better because they only have to be not too rubbish. As Jacob Rees-Mogg was saying, their expectations are actually quite low. They're not it's not the Blair mania. Yeah. So although Blair had that sort of buoyancy, he had higher expectations, which Starmer doesn't really have. So if they're actually just OK and reasonably competent and don't have anything too mental, then they could even do better. And there's a sort of Blairite steel behind this thinking, like we need to think about 2029 already. Bear in mind the Tories are saying it's too soon to start choosing a leader, right? Versus we need to be ready for 2029. So you see the difference in thinking. So they've got this Blair winner mentality. Starmer's got it. They've got the mad people in the party. They're the problem for them. The Zara Sultanas popping up saying just rubbish. But with Starmer and Blair behind him and thinking like this, they can win again.
But then you've got the guy who's the political strategist who's good at planning elections. What else is he going to do now? He's got to look at the next one. Right. You've got Jonathan Ashworth, what's he going to do? He's sitting around doing nothing. So the only people working on this literally have nothing other to fill their time.
This is the problem with our politics as well, is that they spend half their time figuring out how to get re-elected again. Yeah. Everything's about the pursuit and maintenance of power rather than actually doing the jobs. And I mean, they have got on with a lot this week. And they do seem to have achieved rather a lot. The whole machine is rumbling up for them immediately. It seemed like nothing could get done before, but now things are actually possible.
This is like January when I stop drinking and go on a diet and I will go to the gym, and then January 2nd comes along and you run out of steam. So it could be a bit of that.
Well, it's exactly like that. I was the same with winning the election in 2029. I mean, that is an eternal... I mean, in 1 week in politics is like 5 years. So if you do the math, that's like 1,300 years.
It's a long time.
Yeah, anything could happen at that time.
The Sunday Telegraph, when the French left stood down in certain seats to stop their political opponents winning, people said it was terrible. Who would think of doing such a thing? Tell us, Nick.
I see what you've done there, Steve. It's Sunak held secret talks about Farage Red Wall deal, though crucially not actually with Farage. There were talks about talks, really. So this whole piece about Dame Andrea Jenkins trying to organise talks for Reform candidates to stand down in the Red Wall. And we know that Farage was burnt before, standing down, not really getting what they didn't keep to their half of the deal. It's the problem with these Etonian types. You do a deal with them, it doesn't come through.
Boris Johnson wasn't trustworthy.
That's kind of what I'm implying. So, although I think he's part of this channel, so that's satirical content.
Very trustworthy.
Satirical content. Great guy. Great guy.
Really great guy. I'll bring the trombone if I have to bring the trombone. I'll bring it.
Okay, that's a better trumpet. I'm not going to do mine again. What would Jordan Peterson say? That's what I want to know. Well, and then anyway. The point is, there was a deal talks of a deal, but it didn't actually happen. It was between Andy Wigmore and people like this and Craig Williams. It didn't happen. And Sunak's aides were basically against it. They were against him doing this deal. What they're saying is he was quite open to it. They're against it. There's even an implication. One of the reasons the election was called so soon was to sort of tackle the Farage problem and stop Sunak doing any kind of deal with him. I feel like he may have been badly advised reading this, because he did need to tackle the reform issue and they didn't get ahead of it. Gone.
Well, I mean, I just read through this and I just thought this is one of the most ridiculous pieces of journalism I've ever seen. I mean, I'm not just shilling to protect Farage here, but I mean, say the person who's had this hearsay is Dame Andrea, right? Who's an angry Tory who's pissed off with the Tory party.
Language, Timothy.
Oh, I'm angry with the Tory party, and she said she went to speak to this reform guy who didn't know what it was about, and there she said he was definitely in listening mode, i.e. in the room without headphones on. And then he said there was a lot to think about after she'd finished this talk, which we all know in English means I'm absolutely not interested in that whatsoever.
Yeah.
So it's just a complete nothing burger, and I don't know, it's a bit of tittle-tattle, it's a bit of thrill, but really this is, I would call rubbish, to be honest.
Yeah, and it was very unlikely Farage would have ever done any such deal.
Yeah. Wouldn't it have made more sense to actually do the election later? If they'd have left it to like a November election, he would have been busy. He would have certainly wouldn't have stood for a seat. He would have been in America.
Once he'd already had a taste of America.
Yeah.
But he wasn't even in power when this interview took place, when this meeting took place. Farage wasn't even the leader of the party. So, again, they've tried to pin it to him, but, of course, he wasn't even the leader. It just makes no sense. So I don't like it.
What would Timothy have to say about this? Good evening. You'll remember who played Timothy. Damien, the Sunday Telegraph, you don't see much of Angela Rayner unless you're sat opposite her in the House of Commons, of course.
Well, here we have more speculation. Angela Rayner is already being frozen out of the neoliberal side of the Labour Party. The Allies fear. Now, this is, again, from speculation, from words being thrown back and forth. Nobody really knows. But that's kind of the long and the short of it. And this is because all the other business secretary, foreign secretary, everyone's been given these big showpiece projects. You know, Ed's got his solar panels and Lammy's out doing his international diplomacy. But nobody's really defined the role for Angela Rayner yet. And her friends are telling her to get out there, do more, be seen, get stuck in. But we all know that there's still that divide between the Blairites and the more Corbynites. And, of course, now that side have served their purpose of getting Keir in. Questions are emerging as to what's going to happen. Is Keir simply going to kind of put that away, that side of the party away? So, I don't know, but I just think it's still highly speculative, so can't say.
Nick, is she being frozen out? I mean, she can't be fired, so just take the week off.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if she is. I mean, Deputy Prime Minister, it's not clear what the role means. It's kind of one of those, like, Vice President. Sounds good unless you're actually in politics, you realise, it kind of means nothing. And so, as I was saying in the article, Wes is out there and Rachel and all the Blairite lot, and she's there, the trade union-type lefty person she's bound to be frozen out if Starmer gets his way, I would imagine, because she's a problem for him.
Well, he's given her this impossible task of being, in charge of growth. And, of course, if you understand basic economics, you would know that all of the things they're doing are not going to create any growth at all. In fact, the exact opposite will happen.
Luckily, Labour don't understand basic economics, so it works out.
So Angela Rayner's been given a possible task which will distract her from potentially usurping Keir Starmer. That's my take. That's my hot take.
Like the political version of colouring in.
Yeah.
All right. Nick, the Sunday Express, the solution to the prison crisis could be to send prisoners to foreign countries. Has someone warned Australia? Did you check on that?
It's not a bad idea. I mean, Keir Starmer ordered to deport 10,000 foreign criminals to end prison crisis. So, if you look at the Ministry of Justice figures, there's 10,422 foreign nationals held in custody, around 1 in 8 of all prisoners. Around 6,632 of these have been convicted of a crime and sentenced, while others are on remand. So you go, we're kind of like Alcatraz. We're like a prison island. They're just taking people in. Like, why do we have all these people here to just end up in prison anyway? So to me, it seems, I don't use the phrase "send them back," but it seems like a no-brainer.
Well, Keir Starmer did.
Well, he's basically used it.
But send them back to where they came from, is what Keir Starmer said.
Exactly. The problem with you doing that voice is we suddenly realise your normal voice is so close to it. I'm just always thinking about Starmer the whole time, which is great because I love him. But yeah, I mean, this would be a great move for Starmer to actually just get rid of anyone. Just get rid of anyone. If you're a foreign national, you've committed a crime, get rid of them. It'd be such a great, tough move for Starmer to do. The only people who would object would be the far left of his party, who are mental anyway, and are not going to vote for him, don't like him anyway, right? And they're going to be like Owen Jones voting Green and stuff. So I'd say he should do it. Richard Tice is urging him to do it.
Well, that's who's urging him, but I think it's the last thing Keir Starmer would do. In fact, Keir Starmer is Mr. Human Rights, and you cannot deport criminals who aren't from this country or aren't citizens because of the human rights legislation. So there's absolutely no way he's going to do that. So instead, he's decided to simply release any prisoner who served 40% of their sentence.
Yeah.
And things can only get worse mantra is now coming into play. So it's like, how can we make things even worse than they were for the last 14 years? Release the criminals.
But the biggest nationality in this set of people who are deportable, I suppose is the easiest way of saying it, are Albanian, and we've got an agreement, a returns agreement, which must imply that returning to there doesn't contravene human rights. So I think there's some space where he could do this.
Hopefully we can. You're right. He is obsessed with human rights. He's obsessed with going around the world, letting violent murderers off the death penalty. This is one of his passions.
Well, I mean, look, he's a human rights lawyer, and that is law. And I'm not against human rights, but I just think it's highly
for balance.
unlikely.
I am against them.
Well, fine. I mean, I just think I just don't see it happening, and I think the fact that they're releasing the criminals who've served a bit of their sentence just shows how unwilling they are to even consider that.
Well, we'll find out. Watch this space. Damien, the Mail on Sunday. Elon Musk has given money to Donald Trump. Is this hush money? Did he sleep with Trump? Can we find out more?
Well, I'll do this one as Donald for you for this one. Elon Musk donates a sizable amount to a PAC supporting me, Donald Trump. Elon Musk has decided to donate to Donald Trump. Nobody could see it. Incredible, really amazing things. But Elon Musk has been ramping up criticism of Joe Biden. Everybody knows Elon's gone off him, the Democrats, years ago because of the collusion with the FBI and social media companies to censor people, to censor the Hunter Biden allegations and laptop story, all of which has now been proven to be completely true. And, of course, the FBI and Twitter were colluding to censor conservatives in America and, of course, libertarians, anybody that had an opinion deviating slightly from BuzzFeed. So Elon's been on the kind of rough end of the kind of like neoliberal left in America for a long time. And he's also very concerned about the open border policy that Biden's had, which has resulted in 9 million people coming to the country illegally who are now potentially even going to be able to vote, given the fact that you don't need voter ID in many states. And, a bit of fortification could go a long way, given that Biden is barely able to speak.
So it was back in March. Elon said he wasn't going to give money to any party. My question to you, Nick, would be, what would Frank Spencer have to say about this? Well,
turns out to be a pretty complicated question. I can only do Jordan Peterson. But since we're all doing impressions, I wish I could do Frank. So, yeah, it's a good question. It's obvious, as you say, for Musk. Why would he go with the people who want to shut down speech at all costs and hate him, or the people who love his sick memes? It's pretty obvious. He was more of a DeSantis guy than Trump. Famously did the Twitter space, which went horribly wrong, was a big part of why DeSantis didn't do well. But he obviously has pivoted to Trump, probably, if this is true. And why wouldn't you?
Well, everybody is. I mean, even the people who are not allowed to even think about voting for Donald Trump, say the black voters in America, are swinging to Trump massively.
And donors, because of the whole debate.
But everybody is. It's now considered based or cool or edgy to vote for him, just to kind of stick one to the establishment.
Well, that's it for part 2. In your favourite part 3. Good news if you don't like the science, because its museum has less money now, and Scottish school kids don't need no education. They need a bodyguard. Find out why next.
Hello there, good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. After a largely cloudy first half of the weekend, we do still have some outbreaks of rain to contend with into this evening and overnight, particularly for the Scottish borders and to Northumberland towards the North York Moors. There could be some heavy pulses at times, so do take care if you are travelling here. Elsewhere, it is a largely dry night, some clear spells, for particularly Northern Ireland down towards southern areas of England and Wales, where here we could see rural temperatures drop down into single figures. Most of our towns and cities, though, will be holding up in double digits as we start off Sunday morning. But really the best and the brightest of the conditions first thing, very likely to be across the southern portion of the nation. Actually quite a decent amount of sunshine here first thing, and a very nice start to the second half of the weekend. Still got that expansive cloud and rain outbreaks across northern England, but Northern Ireland seeing some bright spots, and actually parts of central Scotland into Argyll and Bute and the southern Highlands not faring too badly either. The far northeast of Scotland though much cloudier with some drizzle, murky conditions around, particularly along coastal areas as we see that northerly feed of air filter in that cloud. The rain across southern Scotland into northern England will gradually ease a bit and turn lighter as we head throughout the day, generally turning patchier, but it is going to be cloudy and fairly dull and dreary still throughout a good portion of the day, and feeling quite cool underneath that. Still temperatures only around 15 to 17 degrees Celsius. Elsewhere in the sunnier spots, parts of central Scotland down towards southern England and Wales, we could see 21, 23 degrees Celsius, so a bit more pleasant and a bit warmer here. If you're hoping that the new week would bring something a bit more summery, I'm afraid I'm going to be the bearer of bad news, because we've got another area of low pressure arriving from the southwest on Monday. This will be bringing bands of showers, some of those looking like they could be heavy, with some thunderstorms, even some hail in the mixture as well, pushing into southern areas of England and Wales. The northern half of the UK seeing the brightest, probably best of the conditions first thing on Monday, so certainly for northern England it will be a much better start to the day compared to what we've seen over the weekend, but staying unsettled throughout next week. Bye-bye.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
As time passes,
She could have saved Storm.
you made my argument for me. My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. We are going to mention the fact that there are reports that gunshots reportedly fired at Donald Trump rally. We'll get you more on that breaking news story as we can bring it to you. We will plough on with Headliners in the meantime and look at tomorrow's newspapers. Nick, the Sunday Telegraph, taxpayers' money going to trade unions in 2023. I wonder which Labour government was in power then.
Almost 100 million of taxpayer cash spent on public sector staff working for trade unions. So the Taxpayers Alliance has revealed that there are all this money going to, it's this kind of Labour thing, the Labour curse really of trade unions and wasting lots of money on it. It's these meetings, facility time it's called, where you meet up with a union rep. I don't fully understand. Do you want to explain it for me, Damien?
Well, before they do that, you do say it's the Labour curse, but this is why I mentioned 2023 in the intro bit. This is not a Labour government issue. They weren't in power then.
Yes, well, I mean, this is the £100 million, right? Well, basically, yes, it's like public sector workers obviously are paid with taxpayers' money, and they can strike and organise to demand more taxpayers' money. And the fact that the problem that the journalist has with this is that they're being, paid, they're rather being paid extra by the unions to. But
it's always been the case that you can have a job and work for the union that represents the workers in that industry. So, I mean, I totally take the point that it's taxpayers' money, you do need to pay more attention to it, but they talk about moonlighting. But then if it were moonlighting, it's not the taxpayer paying that's the problem. Because moonlighting is a second job, often done after hours. I Googled it to make sure I knew what the definition was. They're being paid, they've got 2 jobs. One is a taxpayer one is a union one.
Yes, and that's it, really. And also, we're talking about a minuscule amount of money here on the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
I mean, £100 million in terms of, say, government funding is really a kind of drop in the ocean. And I think this story is reaching to try and create more of a drama than there really is. I mean, this has been going on for a long time, and Angela Rayner and Labour is saying, we want to introduce more of this ability, more rights for people to organise around their unions. So I'm not so sure it's
as a bigger deal or they're going to get much leg room, unfortunately.
Yeah. We'll see. Damien, the Mail on Sunday. People say, why do they teach algebra in school? You don't need that in later life. Well, in some classrooms, there's violence, and that will come in handy in later life up in Scotland.
Yeah, I mean, this is from the Mail on Sunday. An epidemic of violence in Scottish classrooms as the UK's top school chief has blasted the SNP for allowing the problem to spiral out of control. And what really blew my mind about this story is that the majority of this violence is occurring in primary schools. And there's 12,000 incidents have occurred. And it's like, what is going on with these Scottish kids? I mean, they're saying they're blaming it on the lockdowns and I think that's a fair accusation, but let's not forget. I mean, nobody locked down or wanted to lock down harder than the SNP in Scotland, and be damned the consequences. And perhaps these are the consequences. But it's sad that it's happening in Glasgow, which has had problems with youth violence before, and it doesn't bode well for the future there. But I think it's symptomatic of this, perhaps of also of a culture of helicopter parenting and a new kind of breed of parenting, which is very progressive and is all about constantly not allowing your child to be uncomfortable whatsoever. And then, of course, you put those children into a school and that kind of thing breaks out. But who knows? I mean, who knows the real reason?
Yeah, Nick, it used to be, back in my day, which is only slightly older than your day, but it's older than your day, it was parents' evening, it was parents and teachers against the kids, and now it seems to be parents and kid against the teacher.
It's shocking. I mean, a teacher was assaulted by a pupil every 4 minutes, apparently. I mean, imagine that class. I mean, it's horrendous stuff. And to me, it's another sort of almost variation of anarcho-tyranny. We side with criminals, but we also side with children against teachers, and we side with them against parents on certain issues like the trans thing. And the idea that restorative chats are the only action taken against violent children is insane. Obviously, there's no punishment and disincentive for them.
Yeah, and you just imagine, while they can call them these chats, I imagine it's only the teacher talking and the kid just sits there surly.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, there's a good chance that it was progressive policies that led to the problem. It's progressive policies that are going to make them worse. More proof that things can only get worse.
It's a theme, isn't it? Nick, the Observer, the Science Museum, is going off organic chemistry.
Yeah, London's Science Museum forced to cut ties with oil giant and faces pressure of other sponsors. So they've cut ties with Equinor, who was some sort of oil giant, and it's all to do with them not keeping up with their emissions targets and the Paris Climate Agreement and all this kind of stuff. And it's hard for me to care because I don't go to museums and I don't believe in climate change. So for me, the story is really hard to get involved with, but I'm sure it's very serious and important.
Well, I mean, Equinor have been sponsoring the museum's interactive Wonder Lab since 2016. And, I mean, are they going to have to shut down Wonder Lab? I mean, I haven't seen it yet, so that's a massive blow for me. But, I mean, hats off to Equinor for actually funding Wonder Lab. At least they're doing something good with all that oil money, but not anymore. But of course, BP are allowed, and other oil companies also still allowed. So it's just Equinor because the attention has been on them, and they haven't been able to greenwash their ESG policy quite as well.
So that's what you think. I mean, people say that sponsoring events and sponsoring museums is greenwashing. I've never seen a sponsor of a thing and thought, oh, well, they must love the planet now because their logo's on a book or something. Does greenwashing actually work?
Well, I was suggesting more that BP are very good at greenwashing and Equinor probably haven't quite caught up with it yet. Maybe Norway's not quite as good at figuring that out.
Yeah.
But that's my theory.
A lot of ads on podcasts. But then, BP, if you want to put ads in my podcast, I will listen to whatever you have to say. Damien, the Metro, when it comes to puberty blockers, the ball has finally dropped. I mean, the penny has finally dropped.
Well, I mean, I love a good Metro story. So the ban on puberty blockers is driven by ex-Health Secretary's personal views. So the ban on puberty blockers was motivated by the former Health Minister's Secretary's personal views and implemented without taking clinical or other scientific advice, the High Court has heard. This is from a campaign group called Trans Actual. And the reality is that the CAS review is are the people who spoke and pointed out that these medications are just definitively, completely unsafe for anybody under the age of 16.
Didn't the CAS review say there is no evidence to say that they are safe? Just to be Mr. Pernickety, Mr. Pedantry, that was the...
Well, there's no evidence that they're safe. I mean, but yes, but there's a lot of evidence that they're unsafe.
The CAS review went down on the side of, if you don't have evidence that it is safe, you can't use it. Didn't say it should be stopped because there's evidence that it is unsafe.
Of course, I think if the evidence was there that it was safe, the CAS review would have said it's safe.
Yeah.
But on the contrary, I mean, puberty blockers are also known as a form of chemical castration. And just to list a few of the ailments they can give you if you're under the age of 16.
The side effects.
Osteoporosis, heart attack, diabetes, cataracts, hypothyroidism, nausea, seizures, hypertension, brain tumours. I mean, if you look into it, which the Cass Review did, the downsides are terrifying.
Yeah.
And it's deeply immoral to give a child that kind of physical risk from medication.
Yeah, it's good to see some sanity returning to Labour on this. Very much the Blair agenda. Blair has said on the kind of trans issue, he said a man is a man, a woman is a woman. And I feel like, I'm not saying that Starmer just does everything Blair says, of course, but it's very much that agenda rather than the mad woke side. We've already had Zara Sultana come out and say she's totally against this. So Starmer has to somehow control the madder element of his party and just stick with the sanity represented herein, I would say.
Does he have to do that? With a majority of this side...
It would be nice if he did.
But he doesn't have to control any element of his party. No, it's just enough of it that he'll always get everything through Parliament.
You should enjoy it, Steve, because it's a rare moment when I'm going to sympathise with Starmer, because you're here, you're trying to fix a collapsing health system, you're trying to build a record amount of homes and all these incredibly complicated infrastructure challenges. Then you've got nutters in your party just going, oh, and puberty blockers are good, and it's just like, oh, shut up, you idiots.
Well, yeah, use puberty blockers, but don't use them on children. I mean, that's right. All anyone's saying, and it's completely common sense. And
you use them in medical. You use them for their original medical usage only.
I thought you were going to say use puberty blockers on people who have already gone through puberty. Well, interesting take.
Well, they're not. They're not actually puberty blockers. They're a hormonal medication that have a whole host of uses, but they're called puberty blockers by people that want to block the puberty of children.
Right, let's move on to the Mail on Sunday, Nick, and Bear Grylls gets a gig helping with army recruitment, because nothing makes you want to sign up more than a man who is famous for having to drink his own wee.
Yeah, it's King Charles appoints Bear Grylls to a new army role and makes TV adventurer a figurehead for young recruits. So it's the honorary council of the Army Foundation College is the title he's received. What did I say? It's honorary colonel. I said something completely different. Sorry. I'm still traumatised from these events. So the honorary colonel, sorry. And it seems perfectly wholesome to me. My only two thoughts on it are, yeah, Bear Grylls seems all right, and it seems perfectly wholesome. A more cynical thought, maybe we think there's going to be some wars in future, and we're going to have to start sort of promoting the idea of, soldiers and the kind of things like resilience of young people, help them succeed in life and within the military. Maybe it's a kind of like, hey, guys, you think we might need soldiers and sort of men who can do stuff in the future?
Bear Grylls poster, the Your Army Needs You, all of that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, war is the ultimate survival experience, so it's right up his street in that sense. But yeah, he was baptising Russell Brand a few weeks ago. So it's a massive, an enormous, remarkable kind of.
But in the Thames, wasn't it? That's a survival thing.
Was it in the Thames?
Yeah. Bear Grylls always adds a survival element, even to baptism.
Well, you will need some survival skills in the Thames.
Exactly.
And you need some other kinds of survival skills to be associated with Russell Brand. So it's a 3D...
Well, he survived all of it.
Yeah.
Lovely challenge.
He survived Russell Brand's, negative aura, and he gone straight to Prince Charles. Remarkable.
Just the final section to go with hand-holding and our sex lives. That escalated. Get more next.
Wow, yeah, this...
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Question is...
Should our museums stay free for everyone and anyone, or should we be charging our tourists?
So many of the artefacts are from around the world, stolen actually. I think it's almost to add insult to injury to ask people to pay to see the artefacts that were taken without their permission. One of the things that the museum set itself up for is a kind of World Heritage where you can see the stuff they took from your country free of charge, because the British state's willing to do that. Is one of the reasons why we hold on to many of the artefacts from around the world instead of giving them back.
I mean, that's a noble argument, Wayman, but none of the other countries in the world that also contain artefacts from all over the world indulge in that, do they? We still have to pay to see anything that's come from the UK that might be overseas?
No, but the absolute truth is that we've stolen a lot more over many more years than anybody else, because we're we had a very, very big empire, and during that time, taking things from other countries without their permission
And I think our wonderful country, the United Kingdom, is the cradle of modern civilization, not of the ancient world, but of the modern world. You know, for centuries, we've contributed things to the world, which has spread out around the world, and the influence that we've put upon countries around the globe has been massively significant. I think it's a privilege for people to be able to come to this country and track the history of our country through our museums. I can't understand why they've ever been free. The upkeep of museums runs into hundreds of millions of pounds a year. Somebody's got to maintain them and keep them good. Somebody's got to go around the world and collect the artifacts which are in our museums. And I've always had the adage in life, if something is free, it's probably not worth having.
The People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Mark Dolan and you are watching GB News. Let's get rid of that graphic, folks. We've got to tell you a developing story. This is in the United States. Former President Donald Trump appears to have been shot at a rally. Secret Service agents have rushed former President Donald Trump off stage after loud noises and a banging sound rang out at a rally in Pennsylvania. Here is the picture, a few seconds there. You can see some of the bystanders just behind Donald Trump ducking, taking cover for what looks like some kind of shooting incident. Now, I can tell you that Donald Trump is still with us. It doesn't appear clear yet whether he's actually been shot or wounded, but certainly he was at this rally in Pennsylvania addressing his audience when the sound of gunfire could be heard. You can see the people around Donald Trump who'd been there for this rally, Trump supporters, have jumped to the ground. They're ducking out of the way. Loud banging, gunshot sounds. Some kind of firing broke out. Donald Trump himself was swarmed by Secret Service agents. Of course, he is former President Trump, which means he has a top level of security 24/7. And there you can see armed officers surrounding the area. Trump at this point appears to have been removed from the stage, or he's on the floor. He's actually on the ground by the looks of it, having been potentially shot at by somebody in the crowd. Let me say that the latest we've got from the newswires is that Donald Trump appears to raise a fist as he was led off stage, so he struck a characteristically defiant note. But here he is. Now, you'll notice there that there was some kind of gunfire, and Donald Trump touched the side of his neck before going to the ground. It looks like something might have clipped his ear or hit the side of his face or his neck. But Donald Trump appears to have been struck by some kind of debris or a bullet, but it was serious enough for the armed security by which he's surrounded 24/7 to throw him to the ground. There must be 6 or 7 officers, and he's joined now on the stage by more armed cops. The crowd are clearly very distressed at this stage. I'm going to go to somebody that knows Donald Trump very well, and that is a political and economic expert, Roger Giewolb, who knows Donald Trump, is a friend of yours. Your reaction to this shocking footage of what appears to be some kind of incident involving gunfire and Donald Trump?
Yeah, it is. It's very shocking. I don't know whether he was hit or not. The reports that I just read quickly, excuse me one second, I just lost my earpiece. The reports that I read quickly make it could have even been people in the crowd firing at each other rather than President Trump. It's not clear yet what happened. He did touch his neck, but that just could have been instinctive reflex action. I'm sure we'll see more later. I have to say, you know, I've been with him a number of times, and he does love his public. He loves to get out among the people. He does have Secret Service around him all the time, but, you know, sometimes I've looked and thought, wow, you know, he's pretty exposed, this crowd he's in front of. There could be, you know, any nutter in there. And all I can say is, please God, I hope he's all right, and that he wasn't hit, and that he will really tighten up his security as a result of this. And I don't mind if he's constantly surrounded by Secret Service agents from now on.
Indeed, Roger, he likes to consider himself to be the man of the people, and that involves being among the people. But as we've seen tonight, that comes with potential risks. If you're just joining us, Donald Trump appears to have been struck whilst on stage addressing a rally in Pennsylvania. He touched the side of his head, the side of his neck or his ear. Something has clearly clipped him. He's fallen to the ground. His Secret Service agents are protecting him. But when this happened, he then stood back up and I think sort of showed a defiant fist, as if to say, I won't be stopped in my you know, in what I'm trying to do here, which is become the next president of the United States.
That's him to a T, absolutely. I mean, as I say, it could have also been a gesture. I've heard this very loud bang. I just don't know if he was hit or not. I hope not. I don't know if he fell to the stage or he was pushed to the stage. I mean, when you see his Secret Service detail, these men are, and women, these people are huge. And I mean, they move him so fast that they could have thrown him to the stage. Now he's getting up, we're seeing.
Yeah, we've got footage now, if you're listening on the radio. Yeah. Donald Trump back up, looking completely ruffled, his tie now loose, his hair disheveled. And although he's being protected by his armed security, he's got a look of defiance.
There's some blood on his face.
There appears to be blood on his ear. Donald Trump has received an injury to his ear whilst on stage. Yeah. You can see that very clearly. He also looks frail as he's walking down the steps, but frail at the same time defiant, Roger Gewolb. Let me head to our brilliant news reporter, Sam Francis, who's with us. Sam, we're piecing together the evidence here. All of this is playing out on the cameras with this footage. Noticeably, it's very clear, a bloodied former president now.
Indeed. We're also hearing from the Reuters news agency, the latest line coming to us is that Donald Trump is now safe. Protective measures implemented around him at the scene this evening at that rally. The President Biden is also being briefed as we speak in the White House on the incident. Secret Service agents saying that the investigation is now underway. They are due to release more information when that becomes available. But as you say there, shocking scenes from that rally with Donald Trump quite clearly taking on some injuries with blood splattered across his face. Reports saying he was shot at and hit his ear.
Business and political analyst Roger Gewolb is with us. Roger Gewolb is a close friend of Donald Trump. What sort of impact might this have on Mr. Trump just as a human being? Will he be traumatized? Will he go into his shell? How is the man that you know very well going to respond to this, what looks to be violent assault?
Well, I know him. I wouldn't say, he's my best friend, but I mean, absolutely not. I don't think that he will be cowed by this at all. If anything, it will stiffen his resolve.
Stiffen his resolve, indeed. And you are an American. How will Americans watching this footage react to the sight of their former president bloodied and attacked on stage? Of course, horrible memories of JFK assassinated in the 1960s.
1962, yeah. I'm American. I'm also a Brit. And I think my fellow Americans will be absolutely horrified. I don't know if this will... There we go. You see, he's absolutely defiant. And quite rightly so. I don't think that it will heal the huge division in the states per se. But I think people will be really shocked. And I think that hopefully, I hope that some of the criticism from the Trump opponents will die down. And I hope that it's nothing more serious than a nicked ear, which it looks like, and he recovers. I think he'll be back in fighting form tomorrow, I would predict.
Unfortunately,
I just hope he beefs up his security even more.
Roger, there are people that wish ill on Donald Trump, aren't there, in the States?
For sure. Well, all over the world, sure.
Yeah. I mean, is there any way that a figure like that can be safe as long as they leave the house?
Yes, I think if they have proper protection, I mean, you'll notice that it doesn't look, Mark, as if there was any sort of Perspex shield in front of him here.
Yeah.
But he might have been shot from the side. It's hard to tell, but I don't see a shield up there of any kind. And the Pope rides around in a Perspex a motorbike or whatever it is. I think that's what you have to do when we have nutters out there or people filled with hate who are determined to kill somebody whose political views they disagree with.
Most definitely. And how might this impact the complexion of the presidential campaign?
I shouldn't think it will affect it all that much, but if it's going to affect it in any way, it's like every other brickbat thrown at Trump. It will just make him more popular. And, I don't know where Biden will fit into all this and the demands that he resign because he's senile. But look at that man there, shaking his fist and showing his resolve. There's a huge world of difference between him and poor old Joe, who forgets where he is on camera. So I just think President Trump needs more protection and needs it fast. And if he's surrounded by Perspex and police and Secret Service from now on, I don't think that will be a bad thing at all.
I mean, it's clearly a devastating attack. It's an unedifying spectacle. It's really bad news for American democracy to see a former president attacked in that way. Hard to imagine that this attack wasn't politically motivated.
Oh, I mean, it has to be. I mean, because Trump is... he's basically saying, I'm going to save the world. There wouldn't have been a Ukraine. There wouldn't have been a Gaza, just like there wasn't a North Korean problem.
Yeah.
I'm going to make things right. And there are people who want to stop him, people of all kinds. Biden has enemies. I mean, anybody at that level of office is going to have enemies, obviously. And, thank goodness this individual was a bad shot.
Most definitely. And now listen, what about the media? Do you think the media will change the tone by which they report Donald Trump's campaign? Because there's a large chunk of US media that can't stand the guy.
That's a very good question. I hope so. I hope they're a little gentler with him. But American politics is very rough. I mean, it makes our politics here like, fighting in the playground at recess.
Yeah.
So there's no holds barred. I don't know if they'll really ease off, and there'll probably be some real, I don't want to use, some people call them, sort of gutter journalists. There's some real low-down media people that will, say things like, see, that's what he gets for being like, I mean, all sorts of stuff will come out. But I think the bottom line will be not much will change. I think just everybody, even those who don't like Trump, for the sake of democracy and free speech, should thank God that he's all right and that it didn't turn into a Kennedy disaster, which was just terrible. And he just needs more protection. I don't really think it's going to change the course of events in a major way. I just hope that maybe Joe Biden will look at this and say, this is serious stuff. Maybe I better stand down,
Indeed. Listen, let me get the latest from our news reporter, Sam Francis. Sam, what's the latest? Because if you're just joining us, here is footage of Donald Trump addressing a crowd, a rally in Pennsylvania, and he appears to have been shot at. His right ear noticeably bleeding. He touched the side of his head. He went to the ground. He was jumped on by 6 or 7 armed security personnel. He came back to his feet with a defiant fist and has been taken off stage. But what is the latest? Do we know about the well-being and the health of the former president at this stage?
Well, the time in Pennsylvania at this stage is just coming up to 7 o'clock, almost exactly.
Yeah.
And the latest coming to us from the newswires is that Donald Trump is believed to be safe at this stage. As you say, Mark, the US Secret Service have now taken Donald Trump, former president, away in the motorcade. It's believed that the motorcade has left the site of that rally. Multiple shots heard earlier. Outdoor rally taking place in Butler of Pennsylvania. That shot, or multiple shots believed, just after Trump had begun his speech. As we've been repeating throughout the last few minutes, pictures showing bodyguards crowding Trump as he ducked below the podium, only to then stand back up and defiantly punch in the air. The crowd could then be heard repeating and shouting Trump's name as he was escorted to that vehicle. But the latest that we know is that Donald Trump has been escorted safely away in his motorcade. And we're also hearing from a number of political voices and A-list celebrities across the social media platforms tonight, including Elon Musk, who has said in the last few minutes that he hopes that Donald Trump will recover quickly and that he has Donald Trump's best interests at heart, fully backing Donald Trump in his campaign moving forward. CNN, the news agency in the States, were the first to report that Donald Trump was injured. They hadn't originally given any further details. It's now clear, though, that he has sustained injuries to his ear, as the video shows that he has got blood on his right ear and the right side of his face. But we now know that he is, at least Donald Trump, that is at least safe and taken away from the rally at this stage.
There you go. Well, if you're just joining us, this is a News Alert special on GB News. I'm Mark Dolan. We bring you the very distressing news that former President Donald Trump appears to have been shot at, or struck in some way on the side of his head by some kind of bullet or missile or object, which has caused quite significant bleeding on the side of his head, on the right-hand side of his head, perhaps potentially his ear. He's basically jumped to the ground. He's been sort of set upon by his security personnel. He then got back on his feet, raised a defiant fist before walking off stage, at which point you could see quite a lot of blood on the side of his head, from his ear by the looks of it, and some blood on his right cheek as well. A lot of blood, the whole top of his ear covered in blood. A truly unedifying sight for a former president out campaigning to be president once again. Roger Gewolb is a friend of Donald Trump who's with us. We're also joined by our Home Affairs and Security editor, Mark White. Mark, thank you for joining us at this stage in the evening. Unexpected news and horrible echoes of history to see a former president shot at.
It looks, though, like Donald Trump has suffered superficial injuries. It caused bleeding to his ear. We have had a statement that has just come through in the last few minutes from Donald Trump's spokesperson, Stephen Chung, who said that the former president is, quote, fine. In that short statement, he says, President Trump thanks law enforcement and the first responders for their quick action during this heinous act. He is fine and is being checked out at a local medical facility. More details will follow, Chung said. We're also told that President Biden has received an initial briefing on the incident at this Trump rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. He had been at a church service, was unaware of the incident, but has since been briefed initially by his security team. You'll be kept up to date with what is unfolding, because what we don't know after clearly the reports, and we saw for ourselves the reaction of the president grabbing his right ear and then ducking behind the podium there as these apparent gunshots rung out and screams from the crowd there were seen as well, or were heard. What we don't know is whether Secret Service and other law enforcement personnel on the scene at this rally have apprehended a suspect or suspects. And indeed, we don't know, again, at this stage, whether there are any other individuals that might have been injured. If it was multiple gunfire shots, as it seems to have been, fired into a crowd, it seems fairly likely that other people might be injured. I should just add that the Reform Party leader, a GB News presenter, Nigel Farage, has just reacted to what has happened in Pennsylvania. He says mainstream media have spread a narrative of hatred against my friend Donald Trump. I hope they are proud of themselves, disgusting people. So clearly, Nigel Farage acting quite emotionally in that statement that he has put out there, because, of course, Donald Trump is a friend of his. He'll be monitoring, as we all are, this unfolding incident with a view to try to get a proper handle on what exactly has happened here.
Indeed. Donald Trump is a former president, but he'll have near presidential levels of security protection. But these are public figures, and in the end, they're always vulnerable to attack, aren't they, Mark?
Yes, absolutely. He has the security service detail, of course. He would have always had that for the rest of his life as a former president. The fact that he is the front runner, the candidate for the Republicans going into the November elections means, of course, that that security detail has been upped. And when he attends these open air, in particular open air public events, the security threat again is all the more intense, and that requires even more in the way of Secret Service detail. We're told that local law enforcement from Butler in Pennsylvania were also there in significant numbers as well. They responded alongside the Secret Service details, the Secret Service trying to understandably usher Donald Trump, carry him effectively off that stage as quickly as possible. But Donald Trump, clearly shaken, but still remaining defiant, wanted to stay there to shake his fist and to tell the crowd that had gathered there that, you know, he was fine, that he was defiant as he was taken away. And we're told now that he has been treated at a local medical facility. Quite the extent of his injuries, we're not quite sure. It doesn't, from initial reports, seem to have been serious injuries, but an injury certainly towards the right ear of Donald Trump that was bleeding fairly profusely.
Indeed. Mark White, could this have been, might this have been an attempted assassination?
Well, I think it certainly, you know, the obvious thing to say is yes, it certainly looks like that's exactly what it was, because clearly something exited a gun or whatever it was that struck Donald Trump on the right ear. And we heard what clearly sounded like multiple gunshots, and immediate Secret Service response. As I say, we're still waiting to hear, though, whether any suspect or suspects have been detained at this time, and indeed whether anyone else at this very packed rally, as of course all of Donald Trump's rallies are always well attended, whether anyone at the rally has been injured. I should also say that the Pennsylvania governor, Shapiro, has just spoken and been briefed on the situation. The Democratic governor, Josh Shapiro, he said, well, he condemned the political violence and said he's been briefed on the incident at the Donald Trump rally. He goes on to say violence targeted at any political party or political leader is absolutely unacceptable. It has no place in Pennsylvania or the United States. He says, I've been briefed on the situation by Pennsylvania State Police, who are on scene in Butler County and working with our federal and local partners. So I think what Josh Shapiro, the governor, the Democratic governor in Pennsylvania, is saying there, he's quite clear. in that he's talking about political violence. So to answer that question from you, Mark, yes, it certainly looks like this was an assassination attempt.
Mark, it's Sam Francis in the newsroom. We're just reading here as well in the aftermath of this shooting at that rally today that helicopters have been seen flying above the area. Video also showing that armed law enforcement officers were spotted on the roof near the stage where Trump was standing following the shots. What can we expect next from law enforcement? What steps will they be taking to investigate, and how fast can we expect to hear the latest developments from them?
Well, a huge law enforcement response. We're told that the ATF agents, who are the alcohol, tobacco and firearms and explosives experts who will deal with any incident involving firearms or explosives, are en route to the scene to bolster those Secret Service agents who are clearly leading the investigation at the moment in conjunction with the Pennsylvania State Police, local law enforcement in Butler County in Pennsylvania as well. Now, if there is not a suspect as yet in custody, then we're looking at a very significant manhunt in this area, searching those who are around the rally, making sure that the scene is sterile and secure as possible. They have got, of course, their principal in terms of close protection officers, the principal being former President Donald Trump, away from the scene. His motorcade was seen speeding down the main highway just outside this rally, heading for that local medical facility, a very significant armed escort as the former president, now of course the Republican presidential candidate, would receive. So a very significant number of vehicles, outriders from the state police and local Butler County, Pennsylvania troopers as well, who were involved in trying to ensure that motorcade could get to that medical facility quickly. And as we say at this hour, Donald Trump being treated for that injury, and his staff and spokespeople saying that the information they have is that he is fine. The House Democratic leader, Hakeem Jeffries, has also commented, responding to this incident. He says House Democratic, in the statement he said he's praying for the former president. He says, "My thoughts and prayers are with the former President Trump. I'm thankful for the decisive law enforcement response." And he also said, "America is a democracy. Political violence of any kind is never acceptable."
One would imagine that the scenes following the shooting today were rather dramatic, chairs being knocked about, no doubt, police tape being unravelled across the crime scene. Do we have any sense of the size of the rally and how many people were attending? Their pictures seem to show it was relatively well attended.
Yeah, I mean, Donald Trump's rallies always are. He has a very significant base that is very enthusiastic and will follow him wherever he goes within the US to carry out these rallies, fundraising rallies, to bolster his support, and they are always well attended. I should just say that Donald Trump himself has issued a very short statement in which he is thanking law enforcement and first responders for their quick action during what he says is a heinous act. So I think, you know, when those that are charged with trying to protect people like Donald Trump, the former president, other VIPs, that the most difficult part, the most difficult time for the close protection details and the officers to try to protect someone is when they are out in the public, when they're effectively almost face-to-face, hand-to-hand with members of the public, because clearly as politicians, they absolutely want to be in touch with their base and their supporters. They want to show face. They want to meet those who support them to try to gain as much support as they can. And that inevitably puts them in a more vulnerable position when they're out and about in the public. It's always much more difficult for the security services, for the Secret Service, law enforcement in general, to try to keep a VIP safe when it is in an outdoor venue.
Mark White, stay with us. We have got more on this statement from Trump's people. Stephen Chung said that the president thanks law enforcement and indeed first responders for their quick action during this heinous act. If you're just joining us on GB News, gunshots have reportedly been fired at Donald Trump's rally in Pennsylvania, with the former president rushed off stage by security staff after very clearly having been struck by a bullet or some kind of missile or object. Blood all over the top of his right ear, blood on his cheek and his face. He made a defiant fist pump as he was escorted off the stage by his armed security personnel. But his camp is saying, the president, former President Donald Trump, they're saying that Mr. Trump is fine and is being checked out at a local medical facility. More details will follow. And this from the Secret Service Chief of Communications, Anthony Guglielmi, who said an incident occurred on the evening of July the 13th at a Trump rally in Pennsylvania. The Secret Service has implemented protective measures and the former president is safe. This is now an active Secret Service investigation and further information will be released when available. Sam Francis, what have you got for us?
There's just a line here coming to us from Reuters news agency. Again, unconfirmed at this stage, but we're hearing from a local affiliate on the ground there that one person is believed to be dead following the shooting. Clearly not Donald Trump himself. He is said to have been escorted safely away from the scene. But that line coming to us from an ABC affiliate on the ground in Pennsylvania, that one person is believed to be dead. We'll bring more on that as we can get it.
OK, well, that is a grave development. If you're just joining us, not only does Donald Trump, former president, appear to have been the victim of an attempted assassination, but it's now being reported on the news wires that there has been a fatality. So this awful incident has taken a grave twist, a horrible development there. One person reportedly dead. It could have been President Donald Trump, but he has survived with what looks like an injury to his ear. With us down the line is a friend of Donald Trump. It's political and business analyst Roger Gewolb. Now, Roger, this is a devastating incident, a very sad day for American democracy, because an attack on Donald Trump is an attack on the voters. This is an attack on freedom and American values.
And free speech, absolutely. I mean, I was going to say earlier that I'm surprised with the number of shots we heard that other people weren't hit. But unfortunately, that has now been the case, and somebody has been killed because, you know, spraying the podium with bullets like that, you would think it would hit other people as well. The other thing that I've thought while your colleague was speaking, going on there, is that I remember, I'm old enough to remember, and I'm so grateful that I don't have to go through it again, John Kennedy's assassination. I was a very young lad in my first motor car, which was a Chevrolet with about 1 million miles on it, which I bought for a few dollars. And I was driving down the street when I heard it on the radio, and I crashed my brand new, very, very old car into a tree. And that is what happened to a lot of people. The nation went into shock, which took months to recover from, whether you liked JFK, which most people did, or you didn't. I can remember that so well. The United States was in traumatic shock and limbo for months, that this could happen in the land of the free, in the home of the brave, that somebody could do that to American president. And I just thank God, as I think we all should, if anybody else believes in God, I'm sure they do, that President Trump is all right, and that it isn't worse. And, you know, obviously I feel terrible for the individual who was killed in the gunfire. That's just awful. But I'm so grateful that the world, and particularly America, doesn't have to live through what I lived through from probably November till February or March the next year after JFK was shot.
Most definitely. Now, this is a devastating attack. It's, of course, tragic that we already have one fatality. Clearly, the intended target looks to have been former President Donald Trump. And although this is a devastating incident and clearly very traumatic for Donald Trump, his people are saying he's fine. But look, there's blood pouring out of the top of his ear. He's been badly injured. He's got to be shaken. He's not a young man. But Donald Trump will come out fighting, and he'll use this as political leverage, won't he?
Absolutely. And he needs to just up his security. I mean, he's very careful. For example, if he doesn't know you, he won't shake hands. You will have a 7-foot-tall right tackle football player looking security serviceman come up and say, Mr. Dolan, sir, may I shake your hand for the president? And then he'll give you a bone-crunching handshake.
Roger, let me interrupt you because Sam Francis has more.
Mark, thanks. There's a line coming to us from the Washington Post, yet to be verified, but we believe that the person killed, as I mentioned moments ago, was an audience member at the Trump rally. We're also hearing reports that the shooter, one shooter, is dead. Those reports, as I say, yet to be confirmed by the news team here at GB News. But that report just coming into us, and confirmation that Trump was indeed grazed, they say, by the gunfire. 5 shots, reportedly. OK,
Mark White, our security editor. What do you have, Mark?
Well, reports suggesting certainly that the shooter is down. There were eyewitnesses at the rally being quoted now by Mail Online and other outlets as hearing from the Secret Service detail there. They could hear over the radios words, shooter is down, shooter is down. So an indication that clearly, at the very least, that threat has been neutralised. It doesn't necessarily mean, of course, that whoever carried out the shooting has been killed, but certainly that they're down, that they're detained, that the threat has been neutralised. But it may well be that on top of that, of course, someone in the crowd may have been injured or indeed killed as well. That would not be a surprise because if shots were fired towards Donald Trump at the rally with all of these people around him, you know, it certainly seems a fairly high likelihood that some of those bullets may have connected with some other people in that rally. So that will become clear as these incidents always you know, are a bit confused in the first minutes, indeed the first hours after a dramatic and traumatic incident like this. But we will, I'm sure, within the next few minutes, half an hour or so, get a clearer indication about who was caught up in this and whether indeed that suspect who opened fire has been killed or is under arrest at this stage. But just to repeat, the breaking news that is now being reported by a number of media outlets, quoting people in the crowd hearing the Secret Service over the radio saying that the shooter is down multiple times.
And Mark, we can reasonably speculate that the weapon involved will have been some kind of firearm, some kind of gun.
Yes, I mean, you know, I'm not an expert, but it didn't sound like the kind of the very loud shots that you would get from an automatic weapon, a long-barreled weapon. It sounded a lower intensity, the shots, more like they may well have been from a handgun. But, you know, that may be right or wrong in the fullness of time. Again, that will become clear. But as I was saying before, you know, these rallies when the former president or whichever VIP is out there in the open, you can see behind or in front of that podium there is no security glass. Sometimes when a president is attending an open-air event, they'll have bulletproof glass around the podium that offers a level of protection. There's nothing like this for him. He's completely exposed and out in the open at this rally event.
Indeed, Sam Francis, further developments.
Well, I was going to ask a question, Mark. In fact, we're hoping in the next few minutes to get some reaction from people on the ground who were gathered there at the Republican convention as those gunfire shots rang out. But indications at this stage, as we're hearing, that one person has reportedly been killed. Does that suggest it was a lone gunwoman, or any other indications otherwise?
Sam, there is no word really, just those initial reports over the radio that eyewitnesses at the rally seem to be suggesting that it was a shooter. They talk in singular terms of the shooter is down. But that doesn't necessarily mean, of course, that there were not other individuals that might have been involved and are still being hunted at this stage. We await word from law enforcement. I should say the media now, various outlets across the US, starting to quote people that they've been able to speak to in the rally to get their reactions to what was happening. One eyewitness said there was a spray which we initially thought was a fire hose, and then the speaker on the right-hand side started coming down. Something must have hit the hydraulic lines which caused it to fall. They said, we saw President Trump go to the ground and everyone started dropping to the ground because it was chaos. Jason, apparently a friend of this eyewitness, who was also in the audience, said he heard 5 shots in quick succession. We see the Secret Service jump on Trump to protect him. Everyone in the crowd dropped down very quickly. He stood up and put his fist in the air, as, of course, we've been able to see ourselves from the various shots that are being replayed now. He was a little bloody around his ear as he was taken off to his motorcade there.
If you're joining us, thank you, Mark White. If you're joining us, it's Mark Dolan and Sam Francis bringing you a news special, and it's a devastating attack on the former President Donald Trump. It appears to be an attempted assassination of Donald Trump, who, of course, is running in the presidential race to reclaim the keys to the White House in November. Just looking at those pictures, you can see that hundreds, if not thousands, are in attendance at this rally in Pennsylvania. Of course, these rallies are massive, cheering fans, wearing those MAGA hats, Make America Great Again. They're huge fans of Donald Trump and his political project. But what started as a sort of enthusiastic scene of political support has ended in tragedy, not just with a strike on former President Donald Trump with blood streaming from his right ear, but a fatality from somebody in the crowd. As Mark White, our security editor, has just said, we're hearing that the alleged shooter appears to be down. We don't know whether that means they've been taken out, whether they've been shot by armed cops, or whether they've been apprehended. Of course, their identity will come to surface in the hours ahead. But Roger Giewolb, American politics is extremely divided. You know Donald Trump, he's a friend of yours. Will this attempted assassination on Donald Trump further divide left versus right in America?
Mark, I think it depends on, and I think the really big question here, after things calm down a bit, is just as with JFK, was this some disgruntled, mad, whatever individual on his own, or is this somebody who is part of a terror group, an insurgent political group, or some other group which the name of which we all know very well? I don't know, it could be any one of a number of groups. In other words, if this is tied back to any large group that represents a grouping of political interests, I think it could very well have implications. If it's a loner, then less so.
Most definitely. How will the American public be receiving this news as they watch this footage play out? Of course, it's depending on where you are in America, it's early on in the day.
I think they'll all be in shock. I think the number of people who will be pleased at this will be relatively small. It's a reflection on America, on our country, on democracy, on free speech. It's just terrible. It is the same as Kennedy. It hasn't happened since 1962.
Indeed, although, of course, Ronald Reagan was shot at as well. No doubt there are plenty of attempted assassinations that get seen off at the pass without us knowing. But why do American politicians get shot at? Why do they seem to be the most vulnerable politicians in the West, at the very least?
I was going to mention Reagan, but I was going to say with it that, of course, Reagan wasn't as divisive as Donald Trump is. So there's a big difference there. That was a nutter. That was not a political assassination attempt. This could very well be some group that picked this person or persons, because we don't know how many other people are still in the crowd. Mark White seemed to be speaking as if it might be one shooter, because that's what he was hearing they were saying. But, I mean, there could be all sorts of people. There could be a whole setup that's in the crowd, or he could be the designated useful idiot that was given the gun to shoot, like from the Texas Book Depository.
Well, indeed. Let me interrupt you, Roger Gewolb. Let me go back to our security editor, Mark White, if we can. And Mark, let me ask you, obviously this is a devastating attack. If you're just joining us, it's just gone 12:30 in the morning here in the UK. And Donald Trump, addressing a rally of supporters in Pennsylvania, has been shot at. And he appears to have been injured, his right ear covered in blood. He's fallen to the ground. His security personnel have sort of surrounded him. He's then got back up to his feet, raised a rather defiant fist in the air, which is very much in the House style of Donald Trump. And you can see the blood not just on his right ear, on the right side of his head, but across his cheek as well. I've got no doubt those images will become rather iconic in the weeks and months ahead. But Mark White, tragically, someone has been shot. There is to death by the looks of it. There is now a fatality, but Donald Trump lives to tell the tale. Does this tell us that perhaps this was not a professional hit job, but an amateur at work?
No, I think it's far too early to try to conclude that. Clearly, shots were fired, and one of those shots did indeed hit former President Trump, grazed him, according to local medical now, and prosecutors said that President Trump was grazed by a bullet. Now, there are also reports quoting the Butler County District Attorney. He is saying former President Trump was grazed by a bullet and that 2 individuals are dead, including, according to Butler County District Attorney, who's been quoted in a number of media outlets, including the shooter. So I'll just repeat that. The Butler County District Attorney now being quoted in a number of media outlets reporting that President Trump was grazed by a bullet and that 2 individuals are dead, including the shooter. As I say, although this is coming apparently from a reputable source in terms of the Butler County District Attorney, we're still very soon after this incident, and details can emerge that change that tally. So we'll just go with quoting what an official is saying at this point. But clearly, the fact that the shooter is down would, to some degree, indicate that the immediate threat has been dealt with. It doesn't necessarily mean, of course, that there isn't still a wider threat, that there were not others that may have had knowledge of what was about to go down, that may have even been there, that may have offered some kind of material assistance to this shooter. But the other news, if confirmed, from the Butler County District Attorney, that another person has been killed, would indicate perhaps someone from the rally, because that other fatality is not being described as the shooter or indeed a suspect.
Indeed. Roger Giewolb, you've spent time with Donald Trump. He looks defiant there as he raises his fist in the air. He will no doubt leverage this for political gain. That is the nature of Donald Trump. He's an iconoclastic figure and no stranger to a bit of attention. But is this a setback for him personally? Could it impact his confidence, his demeanour, that famous persona of his?
It's not particularly iconoclastic behavior for American politics, I have to say, first of all. And no, I don't think it will dent his confidence, or at least not very much. I think it will very possibly embolden him. The one word that a lot of people I know who know President Trump, but you know, in America, a president is always called president for life. So, you know, we've got President Reagan, so he's still President Trump. Everybody uses one word to describe him, and that word is resilience. He has a resilience that is just unbelievable. It's not of this world. So, no, I don't see him being shattered or weakened, probably emboldened, probably using it for political capital, as might be a little bit distasteful in Britain, but in America, it's part of the game. And any politician would see this as an opportunity, frankly, and they would use the hell out of it. I mean, they would play it for all it's worth.
Will this attack encourage those who might not have supported Donald Trump to vote for him in November? Does what happened tonight make it more likely that he becomes president again?
I think so, definitely. Yes, absolutely. It just shows the evil of the forces that are opposed against this man, draining the swamp, as he puts it, getting rid of the crooked corruption, the gaslighting, the lying, the cheating of the government. It'll probably strengthen his argument that the last election that he lost was fixed, at least to some extent. I think it strengthens all of his arguments and strengthens his position as a candidate and as a man. And I think it will gain the sympathy of Americans. And I think what will particularly do that is that when he stands up and moves on and is not embittered and shows that American spirit, that fighting spirit of moving on, you know, as the Marines, the U.S. Marines say, embrace the suck and move forwards. In other words, when something sucks, embrace it and keep moving forward. I think when he shows that spirit, a lot more Americans will love him and respect him.
Most definitely. Well, listen, we're going to come back to our security editor, Mark White, and also Roger Giewolb, political analyst, geopolitics, business, and somebody that's a friend of Donald Trump. Plus, we're going to be speaking to the very popular US psychiatrist, Dr. Carol Lieberman, in just a few minutes' time. She's a supporter of Donald Trump. She'll give us her reaction on the psychological element of this. Will Donald Trump now be a diminished man, having suffered what looks to have been an assassination attempt? Let's get all of the latest on this developing story from our news presenter, Sam Francis.
That's right, you're live with GB News with Mark Dolan and Sam Francis. It is just coming up to 20 minutes to 1 in the morning here in London, and the time in Pennsylvania is just coming up to 20 minutes to 8 in the evening, where tonight Donald Trump has been shot at during a rally in Pennsylvania. The headlines that we know so far are that Donald Trump, former president, in a statement shared by his campaign, is that he is fine and is currently being checked at a medical facility after being taken away in his motorcade following the shooting incident. 5 shots reportedly heard at that rally. The Secret Service also said in a statement that the former president is safe. The latest we're hearing from the scene is that the shooter, a lone shooter, an attendee, have both been killed. The shooter is dead and an attendee at the rally was killed. That latest line from Butler County District Attorney telling the news agencies in the last few minutes. We're also hearing that one other rally attendee remains in a critical condition. President Biden is currently being updated and briefed. The White House saying that an initial briefing has taken place for the president and his Vice President Kamala Harris. And in the last few minutes, President Trump himself has thanked law enforcement and first responders for their actions during what he has described as a heinous act. He says he is fine. He's being checked at a local medical facility. And that update coming to us from Donald Trump via his campaign spokesperson. We now know that Donald Trump is fine, but the shooter is reportedly dead. A rally attendee has also been killed, and one other person remains in a critical condition.
Thank you so much, Sam Francis. Mark Dolan and Sam Francis with you for a news special. This is a developing story. Donald Trump appears to have suffered an attempted assassination at a rally in Pennsylvania. A contact I've got in the United States tells me that those in attendance would amount to around 7,000 people at this event. Of course, those pictures only show you a portion of the crowd, but those MAGA events, of course, MAGA stands for Make America Great Again, which is Donald Trump's famous slogan. Those MAGA events are like rock concerts. You know, rally is the appropriate word. It's a big love-in for Donald Trump and his vision for America. Of course, he's got momentum in the race for the keys to the White House. A stumbling performance from Joe Biden at the NATO conference when he incorrectly introduced Volodymyr Zelensky as President Putin. But a setback certainly for Donald Trump as he's shot at from the crowd. And as Sam Francis has just confirmed there, it looks like the shooter is now dead and an innocent bystander appears to have died as well. So it looks like there's a head count of 2 tragic deaths. Of course, one of them, the perpetrator, the other, an innocent member of the American public, a likely Donald Trump supporter who's gone to this event to cheer on their hero. And of course, he'll become more of a hero now because he's survived this attack with a bloodied face and a determined fist into the air as he's escorted off the stage. Roger Gewolb is a friend of Donald Trump and an expert on geopolitics and economics. And Roger, let's talk about Joe Biden at this stage and how he might react to what has happened. Of course, there's a big question mark about Joe Biden, notwithstanding what's happened tonight, and whether he still gets to run for the White House in November.
Yeah, I mean, that's a totally separate issue. And I'm sure Joe Biden feels dreadful about this because nobody wants to see something like this, first of all, happen to their opponent. And secondly, he must realize that there are people in the Trump camp who are just as violent, who could do such a thing to him. And so he will probably also beef up his security. At least I hope he does. I hope these gentlemen both are now encased in perspex whenever they're in the public from now on.
Roger, we're going to be watching this footage of Donald Trump being shot at with his bloodied ear and a streak of blood across his cheek for months and years ahead, aren't we? I mean, people are still speculating. Shaking his fist right there. People are going to be still speculating about what happened to JFK in 1962. This will be meat and drink for those conspiracy theorists, won't it?
We're never going to know what happened with JFK. That's one of the great conundrums. Here we have DNA, which we didn't then. We have AI, which we didn't have then. We have all sorts of superior things. And I hope that if this shooter or shooters was not or were not loners, and they track them back to some organization, I think that's going to change everything. If this is just some guy living in his bedsit, you know, eating Spam that he kept frying in a pan every day, going nuts, and then bought a gun and went out and shot at Trump, that's one thing. But if this is somebody who was mandated by an organization, domestic, foreign, terrorist, non-terrorist, political, whatever, who was sent to kill the president, that's going to open up a whole different Pandora's box.
Indeed. Mark White, briefly as you can, because I've got another US guest waiting to come online. But just briefly, if you can, will this be considered a security fail?
We'll have to see in the fullness of time just where the shooter was positioned. There are some images now coming out of the US that show what appears to be the body of a person on a nearby building. Normally, all buildings around the site where a VIP like former president's about to speak would be secure. So it's unclear what that body is, who that body is, whether that indeed is the shooter. Also, a physician, a medical physician at the rally, attending the rally, gave assistance to another person that he said was shot in the head and was wedged between two seats on the main stage behind Donald Trump. He tried to give this person CPR, but they were bleeding very heavily from a head wound caused, it seems, by one of those bullets fired towards Donald Trump.
Most definitely. OK, well, look, let's head over now to the United States. And we're joined now by Dr. Carol Lieberman, who's a legendary US psychiatrist. She's known as America's psychiatrist. She's also a very vocal Donald Trump supporter. Carol, I'm imagining you're in shock this evening.
Oh, it is just chilling to watch these pictures. You know, I am in shock to some degree, but it was also, I kept waiting, I kept expecting this to happen. I mean, not waiting in terms of happily anticipating, but I was worried for Donald Trump for months now, because when he does these rallies, you know, you see how he just stands up. I mean, yes, apparently the Secret Service were fairly close by. They jumped right in, but he's, you know, he's out up there gesticulating. He's, you know, he's a target. I mean, he's an easy target. And so I have been worried about this happening for a long time. Plus, you know, it was the possibility of this happening was increasing because, you know, the Biden team was hoping that lawfare would get him. They had all of these different lawsuits against him, and they were hoping to put him in prison before the election. And that didn't look like it was working, especially with the Supreme Court, you know, making this rule about immunity and so on. So that's what's happening. That was taking away their advantage on that side. And also, at the same time, Biden's cognitive, you know, his dementia that I've been talking about forever has been we're now seeing his dementia more clearly, like especially during the debate, but even at NATO and so on. So the two things, I mean, things were not going well for them. Let's put it that way. And I knew that when they got desperate, that they would resort to an assassination. Now, of course, I guess I should say I don't have any inside knowledge to know that it was that Biden caused this shooter to come and do this. It's my what I'm just thinking from everything that I've seen and so on. But I don't have any, I'm not trying to say that I know this for sure.
No, but Dr. Carol, does the media demonization of Donald Trump lead to events like this? Do you think the press have blood on their hands or are at the very least indirectly culpable for what's happened tonight?
Well, that's a good point. I mean, yes, certainly the media, the mainstream media anyway, is on Biden's side. And yes, they do demonize Trump. And yes, that's why a lot of people have Trump derangement syndrome, you know, that just seeing Trump and the idea of his winning possibly drives them crazy. So yes, you know, it could be, for that matter, it could be just a lone wolf who has Trump derangement syndrome and he was acting totally on his own. But, you know, I think Trump showed his mettle, as horrible as this is, and I'm still, you know, shaking. But Trump showed his mettle. Here, he felt something on his ear. He picked up, he put his hand to his head. He saw blood. Blood was on his face. And yet, what did he do? He didn't just crawl. He put himself down, and that was made sense. But he then stood up and he went fight, fight, fight. You know, with fist pumps, and that is his mettle. That's what's showing. That's what people are seeing. That fight, fight, fight. In other words, if I'm dead, if this has killed me or is going to kill me, I want you all to keep fighting. I mean, because this isn't just about Trump. That's the point too. It's about America. Trump is America's last hope for this election, and if he gets assassinated, America is done.
You're the most famous psychiatrist in America. Will this impact President Trump's mental health? Will he lose his mojo? Will he lose his chutzpah and that famously defiant persona? Will we see a different Donald Trump when he comes through this?
I think he'll be more defiant. The more, in fact, we've seen it like with the different court cases. That they have cowed him to some degree, during the court case, but he comes out stronger. He comes out more determined to make America great again, to fight against these other forces that are trying to destroy America.
Yes, can you tell me about this kind of trauma? You must have had patients that have suffered a violent attack over the years. What will Donald Trump be going through after being shot at? How long is it going to take him to recover? Is he going to need counselling? Will he get flashbacks?
He certainly could. A typical person with that happening to them might well develop PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah.
Of course, he is on a timeline, a time frame. He has to keep going with his campaign. So I think this will make him stronger. But what I really would hope is that there is more protection. I've been kind of shocked at how little protection he has had in terms of, I guess it's hard for him to go in a plastic booth, a see-through booth, telephone booth type thing. But and to reach the crowd, that takes away from how well you could reach people emotionally, if you're like in this booth. It shows that you're scared. But at the same time, he's going to have to do something, and they're going to have to look at what the people are bringing in more carefully. Like, how did somebody get in there with a gun in the first place? So they had better increase their security measures.
Briefly, Dr. Carroll, will this attack on Donald Trump engender sympathy, and will it attract voters who might not previously have considered supporting him?
I think so. The way that he handled it is what will make it, what will make people be more sympathetic and see how much he cares. That's what he showed. Fight, fight, fight. Like, America, you keep on fighting. I might be dead. This may have killed me. It is amazing that, they're saying he's fine, but it is amazing. A shot to the head, to the ear, to the brain, basically, it could have been. Apparently it just grazed him, I guess, but it could have been something, of course, fatal. And so for him to, his first reaction is fight, fight, fight. You keep on going, even if I'm not alive.
Carol, look, it's been a privilege to have you back on the show, and Dr. Roger Giewolb. Can we now speak to another figure in the United States who's a very, very well-connected political voice in America, a political and royal journalist and broadcaster? It's Hillary Fordwich. Hillary, thank you very much for joining us at the very last minute here. Your reaction to these scenes of Donald Trump being shot at, surviving an attempted assassination?
Well, Mark, as you can tell, I'm in a car. I'm actually outside of an event, a big event in Washington, D.C. And of course, this is the talk of the evening. And I will actually reinforce what the lady before me said, the psychiatrist, is that this is the test of a man in a moment. Yeah. This is something that obviously he didn't know was going to happen. This was his character in a split second. The world has witnessed how he responded. Was he down on the ground as a victim, crying, like many people would have done and been justified in doing? No, Mark. He was defiant. He was strong. And I actually was at a table, I will say, with 3 other people who are decidedly liberal. They would never dream of voting for Trump. Their initial reaction, like everyone, they were aghast, like everybody. And then they said what I think will actually speak for a lot of people on the left. They said this gives them admiration for the man. That, Mark, is what I think you will see across this nation. Admiration for the man. People who weren't going to vote for him and aren't supporters.
It does feel like a cultural moment for America, which will endure for many years to come. Hillary, does it change the prospect of who wins in November in the presidential race?
I believe it does, Mark, for the following reasons. One, what I just mentioned, and the previous psychiatrist who's the expert mentally, as she said, I think it's in a moment, this was the character, demonstration of character. That's number one. Number two, I think, like the people at my table, I think this is people that wouldn't have voted for him. They now admire his character in the moment. That's number two. Number three, there are many people, and I don't have any statistics, I prefer to bring facts to the table, Mark, but many who are very doubtful about conspiracy theories. But there's always been this discussion in America about the deep state. The deep state wanting to take out Trump. They tried subpoenas. They tried to taking him to court. That didn't work. Tucker Carlson, a friend of mine, actually said what he fears is that they'll try to take him out. I think that, Mark, is going to add into this play that many people will be tipped now thinking, actually, I didn't think there was a deep state. Perhaps there is.
Indeed. I've just received a tweet from my boss here at GB News, and it's from Barack Obama, who has tweeted the following. There is absolutely no place for political violence in our democracy. Although we don't yet know exactly what happened, we should all be relieved that former President Trump wasn't seriously hurt, and use this moment to recommit ourselves to civility and respect in our politics. Michelle and I are wishing Donald Trump a quick recovery. That is former President Barack Obama. Thanks to three of my very good friends, Hillary Fordwich, Dr. Carol Lieberman and Roger Giewolb. Really appreciate your time. And hopefully next time we speak, it will be under happier circumstances. Let's get a roundup of what's happened this evening in Pennsylvania and our news presenter, Sam Francis.
Mark, thank you, and welcome if you're just joining us. You're live with GB News with Mark Dolan and Sam Francis, rolling coverage live from London, where it is now fast approaching 1 o'clock, while the time in Pennsylvania is almost 8 o'clock in the evening, where tonight Donald Trump has suffered injuries following a shooting at a major campaign rally. What we know so far is that gunshots were fired shortly after Mr. Trump took to the stage at that rally in Pennsylvania, with the former president then rushed off stage by security staff when at least 5 shots were heard. He emerged, held up by security staff. You can see pictures there on screen as he was taken away by his security and put into his motorcade. He previously and defiantly pumped his fist in the air. Mr. Trump appeared to fall to the ground as he was giving that speech before he was quickly, as I say, surrounded by armed security and taken off to his motorcade. Video appearing to show blood on his ear as he was escorted off stage, and images emerging showing an injury to his ear. At least 5 shots reportedly heard, according to reports we've received from witnesses on the ground. We now know Trump's condition is believed to be, as the statement has been shared by his campaign, he is fine and being checked at a medical facility. The Secret Service also echoing that confirmation that Trump is safe tonight. Meanwhile, the shooter, believed at this stage to be a lone shooter, has been killed. And we now know a rally attendee has also died, while at least one other rally attendee is also now in a critical condition. Meanwhile, news from the White House is at this stage, President Biden has been briefed on the incident and will no doubt be kept updated on the ongoing investigation. And President Trump has himself, in the last half hour, via a spokesperson, released his thanks to law enforcement and first responders for their quick action during what he has called tonight a heinous act.
My thanks to Sam Francis for his company this evening in this emergency news special on GB News. Thanks to the team as well, Josh Cressida and everyone behind the scenes for putting together this programme. We didn't anticipate being on air at this stage. It's just coming up to 1 in the morning. But as you just heard there from Sam Francis, is a truly shocking spectacle in the United States. An attempted assassination of one of the most, if not the most famous man in the world, Donald Trump, someone that's been president and will likely be president again. He'll certainly leverage what's happened tonight for political gain. That's his nature, and of course, who could blame him? Politicians will do what they can to prevail. But he's a lucky man to be alive tonight, and that can't be said for an innocent bystander at the Trump rally who tragically lost their life. And we understand that the shooter is dead as well. Of course, we'll find out the identity of that individual and their motivations in due course. What can you say? A dark day for American history. A dark day for American democracy. It ought to be arguments and opinions and debates that win arguments, not bullets and not bombs. It's truly extraordinary to be on air at a time when somebody of the global significance of Donald Trump is struck down whilst addressing his supporters at an event in America, supposedly the land of the free. But for the price of free speech, Donald Trump has almost paid his life. We're going to have more coverage on this on GB News Breakfast from 6 a.m. And of course, I'll bring you reaction at 9 o'clock in Mark Dolan tonight. No doubt 2 hours dominated by this shocking story. Thanks for watching and listening. Keep it GB News.
£30,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours. It's our biggest cash prize of the year so far, and you could be getting that winning call from us to tell you that you're our next Great British Giveaway winner.
I can't believe this.
Oh my God, this is amazing.
That is absolutely fantastic.
We're over the moon.
I've never won anything like this in my life.
Oh, you shocked me. I never won a penny in my life.
If I was there, I'd buy you a drink.
For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Sunday nights on GB News. From 6, Neil Oliver. At 7, it's Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle. At 9, Mark Dolan. And at 11, get set for the week ahead with headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
she could have said stump.
You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's Saturday night, and this is the Saturday 5. I'm Darren Grimes, along with Albie Amoncona, Dr Renee Holderkamp, Madeline Grant and Benjamin Butterworth. Tonight on the show...
Should ex-convicts ever be allowed to become MPs?
Ed Miliband is not the grown-up in the room.
Stella Suella has lefties losing it once again.
Has the UK media class got the hots for Keir Starmer?
And Joe Biden is a great president. That's why he should leave.
It's 6 p.m. and this is the Saturday 5. A very warm welcome to the Saturday 5. Well, folks, it's coming home, or rather, they're coming home. Sir Keir Starmer has flung open the prison doors, sending thousands of convicts back into society. Just as well, right? It's not like Britain isn't already looking like a scene from Mad Max meets Coronation Street. So, to all of you returning renegades, if you miss the bedlam, if you miss the chaos, if you miss the charm and company of your old cellmates, well, you'll feel right at home here on the Saturday 5. Buckle up, it's going to be a wild ride. You know the drill. Each host outlines their argument about a chosen topic, then we all pile in and the first starts to fly. But of course, we want to know your views as well. Send your views and post your comments by visiting gbnews.com/your say. And don't forget to ask your questions for our Ask the 5 segment. No topic off limits. But folks, before we start tearing each other apart, it's time for your Saturday Night News with Sam Francis.
Darren, thank you very much, and good evening to you. It's just after 6 o'clock, and the top story from the newsroom tonight is that a 34-year-old man has now been arrested in connection with the investigation into human remains found in 2 suitcases near Clifton Suspension Bridge in Bristol. Armed police detained the man at Bristol Temple Meads train station, and he's now been taken to London for questioning. There had been a widespread manhunt across Bristol and the City of London in the wake of the discovery of the body parts, but police say they're now not looking for anyone else in connection with the incident. Investigators, though, do believe the remains found at an address in Shepherd's Bush are linked to those found in those 2 suitcases in Bristol earlier this week. Racing commentator John Hunt, whose wife and 2 daughters were killed in a crossbow attack, says the family's devastation can't be put into words. John and his 3rd daughter, Amy, have thanked people for messages of support they've received since the women were targeted in their home in Hertfordshire on Tuesday. 61-year-old Carol Hunt and her 2 daughters, 25-year-old Louise and 28-year-old Hannah, died from their injuries. It comes as a 26-year-old man has now been arrested on suspicion of their murders. In the US, President Biden's insisting he'll keep fighting, telling supporters today he's not just standing as the Democratic candidate, but he'll also beat Donald Trump and win November's election. It comes after 2 standout mistakes at the NATO summit, where he referred to the Ukrainian president as President Putin and mixed up his own vice president with his election rival. But despite those 2 mistakes, the UK's new defence secretary has today defended Joe Biden's leadership of the NATO summit. John Healey, who joined the Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer in Washington for the event, says Joe Biden's still got it.
You probably noticed there's a lot of speculation lately. What's Joe Biden going to do? Is he going to stay in the race? Is he going to drop out? Here's my answer. I am running, and we're going to win. I'm not going to change that.
Apologies there, that was not John Healey. That was, of course, Joe Biden speaking at a rally in Detroit earlier today. Well, an Israeli airstrike has targeted the mastermind behind the 7th of October attack, according to a security official there. But officials in Gaza say at least 71 Palestinians have been killed in the strike on a designated humanitarian area, they claim. Though Israel says the strike targeted the head of Hamas's military wing in an open area where there were only Hamas terrorists and no civilians. Alec Baldwin's manslaughter case has been dismissed by a judge nearly 3 years on from the death of Helena Hutchins on the set of the Western film Rust. The cinematographer was shot with a revolver that the Hollywood actor was using in rehearsals in 2021. The trial collapsed just 3 days into Baldwin's hearing in Santa Fe. It's the second time the case against the actor has been dismissed. He will now not be tried again.
The sanction of dismissal is the only warranted remedy. The jury has been sworn, jeopardy has attached, and a mistrial would not be based upon manifest necessity. Further, the sanction of dismissal is warranted in this case.
World leaders and A-list celebrities are in Mumbai for the wedding of the son of Asia's richest man. The extravagant 4-day ceremony will cap a string of elaborate parties the Ambani family has hosted since March to celebrate the marriage. Former Prime Ministers Tony Blair and Boris Johnson are among Anat Ambani's guests. Royal News and the Princess of Wales will attend the Wimbledon men's singles final tomorrow and present the trophy there. It will be her second public appearance since her cancer diagnosis was announced earlier this year and after she attended Trooping the Colour last month. Kate has been a patron of the All England Lawn and Tennis and Croquet Club since 2016. A major music festival has come to a dramatic halt after a fierce storm swept through the grounds and tore down a tent. Footage you can see here on screen that was filmed by witnesses shows the panic as the storm hit, with people rushing to leave and even abandoning some of their belongings. Star acts like James Blake, Skepta and Royal Blood were silenced as organisers at Slovakia's biggest music festival scrambled to evacuate the site. We now know of at least 34 people who've been taken to hospital with injuries, and the remaining 30,000 attendees have now been instructed to leave on special evacuation buses. And is it coming home? Well, England manager Gareth Southgate certainly thinks so, but he's admitted he wants England to win so much it hurts. That's as they face Spain in the Euro 2024 showdown on Sunday. They've reached the tournament's final for the second time in a row after being beaten by Italy on penalties in 2021. And ahead of tomorrow's match, even the King has asked the England squad to alleviate the blood pressure of the nation by avoiding any late drama in the finals. And thousands of fans have now arrived in Berlin, and it's certainly clear to say that they're enjoying the build-up.
Didn't even get to celebrate the goal. As soon as the second one went in on the phone straight away, right, quick, let's just book. We're from Birmingham, we had to get some from London.
Could be a chance of making history tomorrow. I was at the last final and we never won. I've been following England since 2012 and I just want to see them win something.
I hope that it does finally come home. We've waited a long time. I'm 44 now and it hasn't been home in my lifetime. So I hope this time it comes home.
And we will, of course, be following the match tomorrow night here on GB News with the results for you, if you're not already watching. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sam Francis, back for another update at 7 o'clock.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
It's Saturday night and you're with the Saturday 5. I'm Darren Grimes and I can promise that you're in for a very lively hour. Let's crack on with tonight's first debate. I'm going to abuse position of the chair and lead us off in this segment. Now, Suella Braverman faces outrage from the Liberal Labour Party and the Liberal wing of the so-called Conservatives. Once again, what's new? Here's what she said. She said, "The progress flag screams one thing. Our government allowed the mutilation of children in hospitals. Too many Tory politicians insisted this flag must fly." And she added, "There are numerous whistleblower reports." This is my opinion, actually. There are numerous whistleblower reports from the NHS Tavistock Clinic showing that what she just said there can be seen as true, because there were children, some may be autistic, some may be gay, but all healthy, sacrificed, in my opinion, on the altar of this unchallenged and unchallengeable ideology in an age of the sort of stonewallisation of politics. Now, the Labour MP for me, Stella Creasy, called Braverman's comments bile. But I tell you what's bile. Labour MPs like Rosie Duffield been hounded for challenging Labour's stance that places trans rights above women's rights. Now, some demanded Braverman's expulsion from the Conservatives. Now, they'd need quite the list, I'd say, to go with her, because there are many in that party that agree. And I think that bizarre flag doesn't represent the LGB, and calling out this pride movement's alphabet asylum shouldn't be seen as career-ending and shouldn't be viewed as controversial as it has been this week. Now, I'm going to start with Madeline Grant as a newbie to the show and indeed to the panel. Now, Madeline, I assume you don't agree with the rhetoric used or the hyperbole, you might see it. Don't wish to put words into your mouth. You're perfectly capable of forming them yourself. But do you agree with the overall sentiment of what she's saying?
I think she said a lot of things that were true. But the trouble with Suella Braverman is that she often tends to... am I right in thinking that she said this abroad in America?
Yes.
She does have a habit of going and speaking to a kind of a foreign audience rather than a domestic one. And I think the problem with this is that we're having this very public falling out between different wings of the Conservative Party is, I would say, unhelpful to their chances of forming unity. And although I think she made a lot of very true points, I think there's a way of making those points without sounding... Because it allows your critics to misrepresent and attack you for what you said, however true it is. I think you have to be all the more careful with your language at a time when, you know, the left is definitely on the well, it has triumphed in the general election, and I think is often on the lookout for things that can be used against people on the right.
Renee, now as a doctor, I mean, you've expressed concerns about this very issue on this show before. Wes Streeting seems to be of the view that, you know, puberty blockers should be banned, if the reports are correct. We haven't had confirmation on that. I'm wondering, do you think actually Suella Braverman has won the argument?
I think, look, the argument's been won by lots of women in this arena who have been saying these things in various ways for quite some time, and they've been shut down. Unfortunately, the left are now trying to shut Suella down on this, and she has allowed them to do it by the language that she's used. Having said that, I think the people that have been upset by this will be the politicians around her and the left. I think if you go out onto the streets and talk to the average person, they'll say, damn right, she's saying what we feel.
I don't think the average person feels physically repulsed by a flag. You know, that is just an outrageous thing to say. Look, I don't like the progress flag. I think there was nothing wrong with the original Gilbert Baker pride flag. There was absolutely nothing wrong with it. I hate the progress flag.
Why do you hate it? Why?
It's ugly. There was no need for an update on the pride flag because the original pride flag included everyone and the different colours had different meanings. We don't need a stripe for black people, a stripe for brown people, a stripe for whatever. We don't need it. There was nothing wrong with the original flag. I don't like it. I don't go around going on national television saying I feel physically repulsed by a pride flag which represents a portion of the population in this country.
But
I think if you went around and you said, if someone said I'm physically repulsed by the Star of David, I'm physically repulsed by the Christian cross, I'm physically repulsed by the Islamic sickle, people would not accept it. So why is it acceptable for Suella Braverman, the former Home Secretary of this country, potential future Tory leadership contender, why is it acceptable to anyone for her to say she's physically repulsed by a flag that represents people in this country?
Firstly, you're putting that flag on a pedestal with some very ancient religious symbolism. I don't think the two sit side by side. That's number one. I don't think you can compare them.
No.
And I think I've got a lot of gay friends who are repulsed by that flag.
Yeah.
They want nothing to do with it. They don't want it as part of their identity.
You think it's reasonable for a politician to say they're physically repulsed by a flag that represents people's identities?
I said she should have picked her words differently, but I think her I think her sentiment will be recognised as meaningful to lots of people.
Benjamin, I mean, Wes Streeting in the Telegraph apparently banning puberty blockers and all these other things. You might disagree. You might agree with Renee that actually the language was wrong, but actually the messaging was right. I mean, do you think that's where Labour's at?
Well, I don't think Suella Braverman was actually talking about anything as specific as the health implications of puberty blockers.
Well, she said mutilation.
She was attacking a community, and you said in your remarks that it shouldn't be controversial. The only reason she is saying it and saying it in that way is because controversy is her currency. She hopes that she can try and do a sort of Boris Johnson act of being so outrageous and having all this grassroots right-wings. No, but what she's trying to do is whip up these right-wing grassroots so that MPs feel pressured to put her through. It's not going to work. You know, quite frankly, the fact that when Parliament returned, she flew to America rather than doing what her job is for her constituents on day one, I think tells you where her priorities are. And she has proven that she is not qualified to run a country, because one of the first responsibilities of being a leader is to bring people together. That includes people that don't sit easily with you. That is a job of leadership. And I bet you Suella Braverman will never see the inside of the cabinet room again, because she won't get anywhere near being Conservative Party leader this year. And the version of the Conservative Party that one day wins a general election will not look anything like what Braverman is saying.
You might be right, but Keir Starmer didn't go very far to bring Rosie Duffield in and make her feel
the Kent MPs took a photograph, Madeleine, and Rosie Duffield wasn't in it.
That's wrong. They took a photograph of the newly elected MPs, and she's not newly elected.
Well, I mean...
She was the only Kent MP before, wasn't she?
I mean,
so every Kent Labour MP took a picture apart from Rosie Duffield. That's what happened, isn't it?
There are so many examples of times...
Keir Starmer and chose to be a Labour MP, so clearly she doesn't have a fundamental problem with the Labour Party.
She's many times talked about how ostracised she's been made to feel, and how no one has reached out to her, nobody has apologised to her. Like, I think that's not in doubt. And it's pretty bloody shameless that today, I think, or yesterday, Lisa Nandy said that we're putting an end to culture wars now, as if they've never had a hand in this themselves, as if this is always some invention of the right. You know, it really gets me. I think it's almost... I would almost go so far as to use the word gaslighting. Because we can see how Labour have engaged in culture wars. It's almost like if someone wants to tear down a statue, it's like, well, that's not a culture war. And if you're like, please don't tear down the statue, they're like, stop doing the culture war. You know, I'm so fed up with it. And it's been used... They've been using that framing all the time when it comes to trans.
There was a poll out this last week from More in Common of the issues that motivated people's decision of how to vote. Just 1% of people said transgender issues decided
But
their
that
vote.
doesn't mean that it's right to mutilate children, that does it? It's about what's good.
But the point is that any party that obsesses over this is going to lose.
Okie dokie. Right, who's going to go next then?
I'm going to go next. I've got a bit of an unpopular opinion this week.
Well, there's nothing new.
The people on Twitter, X, formerly known as Twitter, have been certainly telling me it's an unpopular opinion. The question is, should ex-convicts ever be allowed to become MPs? We saw reported by the Mail Online, I believe it was yesterday, that the Reform MP James McMurdoch actually served a jail sentence about 20 years ago because he attacked his then-girlfriend outside a club. And it's started an